Good afternoon, scholars. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to your sixth grade Vista Virtual Lit class. Let's start, as always, by looking at our turn-in percentage from yesterday. 19% bump up. This is by far, definitely our biggest jump up from one day to the next, even our biggest jump up in a given week. 62% of scholars who are good to go on their internet or have a Chromebook are taking their time, took their time yesterday to do their reading and to do their best to answer those questions, which speaks a lot about the focus and the maturity of the scholars who got that done. So great work. I'm proud of you guys. Keep it up. Let's get ready to check our work. So what you need to do right now is make this screen smaller, move me over to the side, and pull up your own work so that you can see your answers next to some of the ones that I'm about to go over, so that you can compare your answers to the ones that my answers or the ones I'm going to show you, so that you can kind of pick up on how you could be more effective in reading more carefully, but also explaining your understandings of that reading in a careful, clear way. What I'm really going to focus on is the last focus question from yesterday. What you learned yesterday was about a couple different parts of the brain. The hippocampus, whose job it is to store, to notice things and to store them away as memories. And then our amygdala, which is in charge of our emotions. The way that they work together sometimes, especially in traumatic moments, is the amygdala tells the hippocampus to pay really close attention because something big's going on right now. And the hippocampus does pay close attention to the main problem, but all the extra little side stuff gets forgotten, right? So there can be really traumatic or emotional memories that we have that we'll never forget. But what we'll never forget is the main thing that we saw or heard, and not all the extra little things, right? I think back to a time on my first family bike ride when I was riding a two-wheel bike. I'll cut this to make a long story short. We were going down a big hill, and I was very scared because it was my first time on a two-wheel bike, and this hill scared me. My mom and my sister were with my brother, my older brother, were waiting down at the bottom of the hill. My little sister was 3, so she was in a little bike seat on the back of my mom's. While they waited down this hill, they were over kind of a little bridge that went over a ditch, and in the ditch below were rocks and just water. And my sister, who again was 3 and was on the back of my mom's bike, she leaned over suddenly to see what was down there. My mom wasn't prepared for it, and they flipped, and they went falling down 12, 15 feet into the ditch. And my sister ended up landing right on a rock. And if you ever get a cut on your head, you know there's lots of blood vessels in your head. So if you ever hurt your head and it starts bleeding, it bleeds a lot. So by the time I got down to the bottom of the hill, because my dad left me by myself because, this terrible thing had happened, I make my way down the bottom hill. My sister is covered in blood, almost head to toe. Her hair is slicked back with blood. There was so much blood. My mom is screaming and crying that she said I'll always remember my sister screaming, "Take shoes off, take my shoes off," because she'd just gotten these new shoes and she didn't want them to get wet or get blood on them. That's my guess. And my mom was yelling, I think I broke her neck. I think I broke her neck. And I'll always remember that. All the extra stuff, I don't know. I can't tell you the color of the clothes, that anyone was wearing. If I was asked to testify in court before I learned about this, about how unreliable our memories were, I would probably testify that my sister's shoes were white. But actually, I don't know. I'm just guessing they were white because of what I do remember was her yelling, "Take my shoes off." But I don't remember the shoes themselves, right? So um, just an example of a traumatic memory of mine where I remember the main thing. I remember my mom dragging my sister out, trying to of the water and up the side of the hill, but I don't remember all the extra stuff. I just remember what that looked like, and I remember what they were yelling, but all the extra stuff I don't know, right? So, with that in mind, what advice would the scientists in this article have for the jurors as they are weighing all the evidence and making their decisions about whether this boy killed his father or not? I've got three excellent answers. Israel said the scientists would tell the jurors to question their claim because the witnesses might have been confident, but their memory might have been so emotional, and their memory about the killing is incorrect. A person's memory might be incorrect if the memory is too emotional or traumatic, and I know a killing might be really traumatic. Mirage says the scientists featured in the article might advise the jurors in 12 Angry Men to consider the fact that the witnesses might have gotten the story mixed up since it was such an emotional moment. They could have remembered the big event, the father dying, but messed up who killed the father and thought it was the boy. Jada agrees that they might get things mixed up, but she has a different idea of what they might mix up. She says this text can relate to 12 Angry Men because the witnesses could have missed small details that show the defendant is guilty, because the text shows how you can't remember a big event, but you can't remember this. I think you meant you can remember a big event, but you can't remember the small little details about the big event, which can lead to miscommunication. Yeah. So all three say we get these things wrong, or parts of these things wrong. Israel and Mirage are saying that they might not have seen what they think they saw. Jade is saying they might be forgetting details that prove the boy did it. I don't know. Let's start today's lesson. Today we're going to pick up right where we left off, and today you're going to be really paying close attention to each one of the jurors, and you're going to be looking for what each juror says that might show that he is confident that the boy did it, or that he might doubt that the boy did it. And we're going to be looking for those exact lines that key that, and you're going to track those. I'll show you what I mean. So we'll do the first little bit together. Here is today's. You're going to see a tracker like this, okay? Where each character is listed. You're going to track what their vote is, and you're going to track what evidence you have, okay? We're picking up on page 36. Let me add that for you guys. Yeah, right here, page 36, where the sixth juror says, hey, look, the man wants to talk. And we're going to read 8 pages today. And while we read, when you see or when you notice one of the jurors say something that shows proof that he believes the boy did it or doubt that the boy did it, you're going to track that evidence and you're going to track the vote. Okay, so let's pick up together so we can kind of start this off. All right, right here, very, very top of page 36, the sixth juror says, hey, look, the man wants to talk. Sixth juror, hey, look, the man wants to talk. Ninth juror, thank you, to the seventh juror. This gentleman, he indicates the eighth juror, has been standing alone against us. He doesn't say the boy is not guilty, he just isn't sure. Well, remember, guys, the ninth juror just changed his vote to not guilty. So so we know the eighth and the ninth juror have voted not guilty. All the other jurors have voted guilty, okay? That's important for later on when I show you the exit ticket. He just isn't sure. Well, it's not easy to stand alone against the ridicule of others. He gambled for support, and I gave it to him. I respect his motives. The boy on trial is probably guilty, but I want to hear more. Now, in this next part, guys, there's going to be lots of movement around, so it's important to pay close attention and visualize what you can. The seventh juror crosses to the washroom. For the time being, Now, this is still the ninth juror talking, though. For the time being, the vote is 10-2. The seventh juror enters the washroom, slams the door behind him. I'm talking here. You have no right to. Eighth juror to the ninth juror. He can't hear you. He never will. That's the baseball guy, right? He just walked out of the room while the ninth juror is explaining himself, and the ninth juror kind of got offended by it. Third juror. Well, if the speech is over, maybe we can go on. Foreman. I think we ought to take a break. One man's inside there. Let's wait for him. The foreman crosses over moves the foreman moves above the table to where the two knives are stuck into it. He plucks the tagged knife out and closes it. That's the actual one, the one that's tagged as evidence. 12th juror to the 11th juror. Looks like we're really hung up here. I mean, that thing with the old man was pretty unexpected. I wish I knew how we could break this up. Remember, guys, also the ninth juror is an old man. He smiles suddenly. You know, in advertising, I told you I worked in an ad agency, didn't I? Now there's going to be lots of movement, scholars. The foreman crosses to the door and knocks. The guard unlocks the door and enters. The foreman hands him the knife. The guard exits, locking the door. And this is still the 12th juror talking. Well, there are some pretty strange people. Not strange, really. They just have peculiar ways of expressing themselves. You know what I mean? The 11th juror nods. Well, it's probably the same in your business, right? What do you do? I'm a watchmaker. Remember, this guy's European, so he's got an accent. Really? The finest watchmakers come from Europe, I imagine. The 11th juror bows slightly. The 6th juror rises and goes into the lavatory. This is still the 12th juror talking, scholars. Anyway, I was telling you, in the agency, when they reach a point like this in a meeting, there's always some character ready with an idea. And it kills me. I mean, it's the weirdest thing. Sometimes the way they precede the idea with some kind of strange phrase like, oh, some exec will say, here's an idea. Let's run it up the flagpole and see if anyone salutes it. Or put it on a bus and see if it gets off at Wall Street. I mean, it's idiotic, but it's funny. The 8th juror crosses into the washroom and hangs his jacket on a hook. The 3rd juror crosses to the 5th juror. 3rd juror to the 5th juror. Look, I was a little excited. You know how it is. I didn't mean to get nasty or anything. The 5th juror crosses away from the 3rd juror without answering. The 7th juror steps away from the wash basin and dries his hands. The 8th juror crosses to the wash basin. 7th juror to the 8th juror. Say, are you a salesman? 8th juror. I'm an architect. 7th juror. You know what a soft sell is? You're pretty good at it. I'll tell you, I got a different technique. Jokes, drinks, knock 'em on their asses. I made $27,000 last year selling marmalade. That's not bad, considering marmalade. He watches the 8th juror for a moment. What are you getting out of it? Kicks? The boy is guilty, pal. Let's go home before we get sore throats. Pause. I just saw a line that very clearly shows what one of the characters' verdict is. Do you see it? Yes, right here. The boy is guilty, pal. Let's go home before we get sore throats. I highlighted it. And you guys can do this. It's going to save you a lot of time. It's going to get the quotes right. I highlighted it right in the PDF. I right-clicked copy, and I'm going to switch this right into the 7th juror, right? I'm going to paste it. I'm going to format it because that spacing is weird. There's the quote. The boy is guilty, pal. Let's go home before we get sore throats. That was on page is this? Can't see. Move. Page 37. So parentheses, page 37. And right here, where it says vote, I'll put G for guilty. All right. So that's how we're going to fill this tracker out. Continue reading until the stopping point, and whenever you see a clear line that shows that a juror thinks the boy is guilty, or they might be doubting, they might vote not guilty, you write down the line, the page, and a G for guilty or an N for not guilty. Just a heads up, there were two characters where I did not find a good piece of evidence for or against. So I'm curious to see if you have a hard time with those same two. So there were 10 jurors, so I'm like, there was a clear line that I felt showed. There was two of them. I didn't really see anything. And that's important, right? Our exit ticket question is this. Which juror is most likely to change his vote to not guilty? What does this juror say or do that makes you think that? Remember, so far, only jurors 8 and 9 have officially done so. So you can't use 8 or 9, guys. You may not use 8 or 9. You can't use jurors 8 or 9 because they already changed their vote to not guilty. Any other juror of all the other jurors, which one do you think, based on this section, which one do you think might be the next one who changes his vote to not guilty? All right, can't wait to see what evidence jumps out at you, and I can't wait to see the different opinions you guys have on who might change their vote next. All right, enjoy 12 Angry Men, and I will see you tomorrow.